that these workers, they have rights. And the basis of the sack is even more annoying. The fact that these workers decided to congregate and unionize. It's not a crime for workers to want to protect their own interests. And because, you know, when you are dealing with very big conglomerates like the Dangote group that has access to billions in dollars, individual workers cannot on their own fight for their rights. They must do so through unions. That the workers have committed no crime in ensuring that they congregate together and come together to form or join a union. That the Dangote group of companies, from agriculture to sugar to fertilizer to now petroleum, that they have in aggregate about 9 unions, different unions, in many of the facilities and activities that they profile. And therefore, the group should not be an anti-workers business, should not be an anti-worker company. And this is the basis for us gathering here today, that the issues going on at the refinery exposes the bigger problem of monopoly being perpetrated by the Dangote group. The Federal Competition and Consumer Protection Act prohibits any company from abusing a dominant position to weaken competition. Yet, we are confronted with a company that has benefited from government licenses, exclusive privileges, and subsidized foreign exchanges over the year. And this company now uses that power to entrench, control, and silence labor. Within Dangote's businesses, from food and beverages to fertilizer, cement, and more, there are close to 9 different unions representing his workers. Each of these unions exists because workers have the right to organize and to be treated with dignity. The monopolistic era of master-servant relationship is long gone, and the rights of labor must be respected. It is matter of public record that the Dangote refinery was built with extraordinary support from the federal government, from central bank interventions to preferential access to foreign exchange and other forms of government support. When a private project of this scale that was nurtured using public resources, it ceases to be purely private enterprise. And it's interesting to note that, in fact, the interest of the country, which was at 30%, magically is now 7%. Magically, it's 7%. That's not the purpose or the input of today's intervention. The public has every right to demand full transparency on the refinery's recruitment practices, especially where allegations of mass sackings and replacement of Nigerian staff with foreign workers have been raised. This is the Federal Republic of Nigeria, not the Federal Republic of Dangote. Nigeria is not and must not be allowed to become a private fiefdom of any corporate actor. The social contract between employer and employee and between private enterprise and the public that sustains it demands fairness, transparency, and respect for fundamental rights. There is no justification for sacking more than 800 Nigerian professionals simply for organizing, nor for any employer to exploit his size or state-granted advantage to silence labor. We have decided to issue these on behalf of the Save the Republic group, a public interest group that we have just come up with. And we also hope that as events unfold in the country, this group will become very vocal in organizing and expressing our views on topical issues in the country. It's important to note that, yes, that the agreement reached with the Ministry of Labor, because efforts were made in the beginning to prevent the escalation of these issues. The agreement reached by the Ministry of Labor with Dangote Group was violated, and these workers were still sacked, despite all the efforts that was made, by the Ministry of Labor and both the DSS. While it is commendable that these efforts were made to prevent escalation of this issue, but what we have witnessed today now is we have witnessed Pengasen actually now going to site to enforce a shutdown. And this is regrettable. We must commend parties that have made efforts to resolve this matter, and we urge the parties go back to the table and negotiate and look for a way to resolve the dispute. But we want to be very clear that the Dangote group must respect the rights of workers and ensure that these rights are protected at all times. I don't think that is the idea of Pengassin. I don't think Pengassin wants to kill. Pengassin is just saying that you cannot wake up in one fell swoop and sack 800 engineers and Nigerian workers. That's what they are saying. And that you cannot prevent people from joining the union. The Nigerians have the right to unionize. The workers have the right to unionize. And that this is no longer 1860 or 1778 where people are treated like slaves. The workers have the right to interact among each other and come together to defend their own rights and interests. So it's not about, oh, they want to kill the Dangote refinery, they want to do this and they want to do that. You know, it's just about protecting the rights and dignity of workers in the workplace. Simple. Because there's no justification whatsoever. Because a week ago, Aliko Dangote was praising the Nigerian engineers that they are the best in the world, that they are better than their contemporaries all over the world. Then all of a sudden today, he has sacked them and replaced them with Indians. You know, so it's just about looking after each other as citizens in the country. And that is the reason why we have decided to come in solidarity with Pengassin to see how we can also lend our voice.
Workers, welfare, and our democracy. If we allow this kind of timid and archaic nature of treating people, not just workers, to continue in a democratic space, our democratic space will be shrinking and if not, even killing the citizens. For God's sake, workers are no slaves. Workers have their rights. And under any guise of employment, it is on the basis of workers' employee-employer relationship, not as a slave or as a taskmaster. We are calling on all meaning Nigerians. Today is the workers. It could be a prototype for the citizens tomorrow. We were calling on all well-meaning Nigerians. Don't just sit back and say it concerns one group of individuals. No. In one way or the other, we are also affected. Whatsoever that happens at the downstream or upstream sector affects the common Nigerian. Why this is a dangerous trend is that we are letting capitalists have the final say in our nation. And then what happens to humanity? What happens to the cost of living for the common man? It is very critical that these guys must have to sit on a table and find a proper way of resolving this issue. Why? Because workers are no slaves, workers have their rights, and an injury to one is an injury to all. We are not castigating the issue to make it have more wounds. We're telling where the wounds are so that there could be repairs. Because what activists are known to do, mostly by capitalists, is to say they want to expand the wounds. No. The essence of this press conference is to address the issues, show the wounds, so that there can be clarity on how to repair it. And the way forward in this matter is to sit at the dialogue table, not to take on red biro and sack over 1,000 workers. It's wrong. Nobody is a slave. Nobody should be a slave master. Nobody should be a tax master. And as concerns group of individuals, we are raising this alarm so that it could be nipped in the bud before it's too late. Thank you very much.
The president of Ohanes Ndigo FCT. And just as my leader said, where we are here representing the Save the Republic group. And I want to point out that it is very unfortunate that a country of over 220 million people could be held to a ransom by an individual or a particular private sector. The dispute between Pengassin and Dangote Group has actually informed today's press conference, where a common or ordinary Nigerian man had not recovered from the subsidy removal, which is as well oil sector, from oil sector. All goodwill individual should speak up. Haven't seen the excruciating economy we found ourselves today as Nigerians. It is important that we know that a stitch in time saves nine. Goodwill individual must speak. And we are standing today to speak that Nigeria must rise. And we are lending our support to all individuals that have mediated earlier before now, and those who are still going to mediate. That's between now under 24 hours, that the saga of Pengassin and Dangote Group should be put to a stop, and enough to ill health treatment to Nigerian workers. Any ill health treatment that affect a Nigerian worker also affect a farmer, also affect a trader, also affect corporate organizations, also affect banks. So enough of ill treatment to Nigerian workers. I was also calling on Labour and other trade union to come up and speak out that Nigeria may have the way forward. Thank you very much.
Fuel from the refinery that is produced in Ibejuleki should be cheaper than the one that they bring from Brazil. Yes. And the fuel that is refined here in Ibejuleki is more expensive than the fuel that is brought into the country from Brazil. It's only this is what we call Nigerian wonder. Nigerian wonder that is bigger than American wonder. You understand? Because I've never seen in my life where something that is produced here is not imported, will be more expensive than the one that they import from abroad. That Dangote, from our calculations, can sell fuel for 550, 600 and still make maximum profit and still be able to repay his loan. But that's not even what we are saying today. That's not the reason why we are here. We also know that he wants to control all the sectors in the oil and gas. From currently now, what he's doing right now is that he's the one producing. He's now the one in charge of retail through one of his proxies, and he now has trucks to be transporting the product to the end user. So he wants to control from production to the end user. But that is not even the reason why we are here today. The reason why we're here is because Nigerian workers have been sacked, and unjustly so. The irreducible minimum that we're asking for is that they should be reinstated, so that Nigerians will not be at the receiving end of now. We will now have another fuel scarcity on our. So we don't want Nigerians to suffer untoldly, and we don't want those 800 families plus and their defendants to also suffer. So we're calling on the government and the security agencies who are involved, and Aliko Dangote himself, that they should please resolve this issue as quick as possible.
Nigeria is like a household that is not a family. There's a difference between a household and a family. You could have children of the same parents in one household, but if there's no cohesion, there's no unity of purpose, and they're working at cross purposes, such family will never make progress.
It becomes like an unhealthy amalgam of your own willing.
Exactly. It becomes a house of commotion. But at the same time, you can have a coming together of people that are not necessarily people of same bloodline, but with well-defined ethos, and they form a family, well-bonded family, and they begin to work in sync with each other, harmonize each other's individual interests into their common interests, and go all out to achieve such interests, and they become prosperous. And I've had the argument severally too, that the reason for Nigeria's problem, the reason for Nigeria's disunity, the reason for Nigeria's inability to transform into a nation of citizens from a country of tribesmen has to do with our history. And that is why my column is actually titled Out of the Box, something similar to this podcast.
Oh, really?
Because we need to think outside of the box at this point to find solutions to our problems. And it begins with debunking some of these myths, some of these fallacies, putting our history in proper perspective so that when you urge people to embrace national unity and social cohesion, you're not urging them to commit suicide by their own perception. You are urging them to embrace life and living as it's supposed to be in the 21st century. So, for instance, it's a fallacy. Anybody who tells you that Nigeria or Nigerians or the constituent peoples of Nigeria had nothing in common before 1914, for instance, there's this popular belief that the white man came and clubbed us together. We had nothing in common. We were disparate peoples, and so that is why it's difficult. And so people are saying, for instance, it's that you create states along all ethnic lines. As we're saying, let us break up. We can never be one nation. And so this is a fallacy. This is actually opposite of what the reality was, because our history, our customs, our tradition, our languages, and the proximity of our individual geography suggests otherwise, and clearly shows that long before 1914, there were interrelations between the constituent peoples of Nigeria through trade, through warfare, through diplomacy, through marital ties, and so on and so forth, even beyond the current borders of Nigeria, into Cameroon, for instance, into Niger, into Benin Republic, and into Chad. So in fact, the cultural commonwealth that should have been Nigeria is actually incomplete within the current space. So meaning that we have even more in common than what divides us. So for me, Nigeria is like one black African family, a largely monoracial entity, with the various sectional or ethnic groups simply a plurality of the same black African family. It's like having a bird with beautiful feathers. So it's one bird, but the plumages are simply a reflection of the beautiful feathers that makes up the beauty of such a bird. That is how Nigeria ordinarily is supposed to be.